get crazy!
Most everyone's mad here.
Welcome one and all to AniMat's Crazy Cartoon Cast. Yes, we are officially back, and also welcome to 2023. I hope you all had a very wonderful holidays. Hopefully you all spent a great time, whether it be celebrating Christmas. Oh, okay, well, that answers that question then. Thank you, Jay Monty, for the subscription there. Oh, and also Gorn as well. Oh boy, already we're starting off with some subscription there. So that's great to see. But anyways, hopefully you all had a wonderful Christmas, a wonderful Hanukkah, a wonderful Kwanzaa, and of course, a happy new year. I hope you all had a wonderful time. Honestly, for me, I just have to say that mine was a bit so-so, and oh my god, already we're activating a hype train going on over here on Twitch. That is beautiful to see, and thank you all for the subscriptions, and hopefully we can keep this hype train going. But anyways, as I was saying, yeah, my holidays, honestly, it was just so-so, and the big reason was because, well, I was sick. Now, thankfully, it wasn't COVID. I just ended up catching a cold. And it was at the worst time as well, considering that it kind of spoiled the moment and it really did hold me back from fully immersing myself in the Christmas celebrations, especially when this was very hyped up for me and my family. So, yeah, it was a bit unfortunate that it occurred to me. Now, thankfully, right now, I am much, much better. I cannot say that I am 100%, which, by the way, just warning you that in this episode, there may be some chances where I might end up having a coughing fit, but don't worry, that's just residue from the cold. But thankfully, I'm all good. Definitely better than last week, which really did work out that I didn't do a podcast during that time, because honestly, I was like almost 100% bedridden during that time. Like, I was doing nothing and my nose was like fully clogged. It sucked. But anyways, I'm not here to talk about my woes of being sick during the holidays. What we are here is to go and look back at 2022, to have one final goodbye for that year, as we are going to go and look back at some of the biggest animation news that has occurred. So big, in fact, that some of them would go and be categorized as entertainment news in general. That's right, folks. We are about to go and enter into the annual top 5 animation news of the year, which in this case is going to be the top 5 animation news of 2022. And I can tell you right now, preparing for this episode, it was absolutely crazy looking back at all the insane things that have occurred. And there have been a lot of honorable mentions that have happened, but really, I went down and nailed it to just 5 of the biggest, most significant ones of them all, the ones that we can pretty much take with us and look forward to 2023 and see what the results of what last year will happen, especially when a lot of them are related to some big name companies. And the craziness that happened then, well, let's just say we are going to see some serious consequences as to what the results will be for 2023. Excuse me for a sec. Oh, excuse me. See, I told you that it would happen. But yes, we are going to go and count them all down one by one and have one last look at all these crazy things before we go and move forward to 2023. So, with all that said and done, I would like to go into the chat wall and I would like to ask you all, with this hype train going on, are you ready to get things started with the top 5 animation news of 2022? Let me hear it, folks. Are you ready? Let's see now. Yes. Yes, 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 yes. That is beautiful. That is great to see. All right, so I'm not going to go and get things started immediately because I'm just going to say right now, I'm going to need all the time that I need for each of these numbers. So I'm going to take a quick break right now so that the ads won't suddenly interrupt me in the middle of talking about what each of these numbers are going to be, especially for number 5. So once after we get through the break, we will return and start with number 5, in which we will start off a little bit light with some of the craziest takes over one animated movie. All right, so let us begin at number 5 on our list. And at number 5, this one is just going to be reflecting on just one animated feature, one animated film that has been released in 2022, and what many people would often regard as one of the better animated features. Maybe it would be debatable if some would say it is the best animated film of the year, but definitely one of the most enjoyable ones and definitely one of the big animation highlights that we have received. However, when people want to be negative towards this feature, it's not necessarily that they were negative that people really got upset about. It's the stuff that they would say that kind of made things sound a little bit weird, and it says a lot more about the individual more so than it would say about this movie. Now, I don't know why this film in particular really let out the worst on some people, but man, did it let out some crazy reactions. So starting at number 5, we have something that I like to call turning red over bad takes. More than any other animated feature this year, Pixar's animated film Turning Red seems to be the one that let out some of the most unusual takes and some of the most unusual explanations for having certain opinions over this animated feature. And believe it or not, this actually started even before the movie was released in March on Disney+, where one thing that really got people freaked out was regarding the fact that they heard that this movie would be one major allegory in regards to puberty, or specifically that this film would talk about periods. And from there, we've heard a lot of different reactions towards how this animated feature, or more specifically, this family-friendly animated feature that kids could also watch, would go and actually be straightforward to talk about periods. And a lot of parents, and especially conservative parents and conservative groups, got massively upset when they heard that they would go into such a taboo subject, even to the point of demanding to either boycott or to censor the picture so that they don't want to end up in that position where they would have to go and talk to their kids in regards to what is a period, or what is this movie talking about when they bring up periods or puberty and stuff like that. But then, when the movie did come out, things did get a little bit better that now the public was able to see it for themselves, and from there gathered a lot of very positive word of mouth. But then there was one critic that stepped in and said something that really sounded off. And this was specifically in regards to a critic on the website Cinema Blend named Sean O'Connell, or more specifically, Cinema Blend's managing director, Sean O'Connell, in which he had a take in regards to Turning Red that really sounded bad more for him, more so than how he is portraying Turning Red. And reading from my source here on NPR, he stated, "By rooting Turning Red very specifically in the Asian community of Toronto, the film legitimately feels like it was made for Domishi's friends and immediate family members, which is fine, but also a tad limiting in scope." In a since deleted tweet, he also called the movie exhausting. Now, this reaction right here ended up receiving a lot of backlash from the entire internet. It's not just the public that got angry, but it also ended up getting some responses from Domi Shi and from some of the cast and crew who worked on Turning Red. And of course, the big reason was because it really sounded massively ignorant. It just sounded like the person was just a bit racist or a bit misogynistic, that it sounded like they cannot get into this movie because the lead character is an Asian teenage girl from Toronto and only believes that, oh, it's just going to be Asian teenage girls from Toronto who can get into this feature. When obviously, when you look at all the different reactions, he's definitely proven wrong. So from there, he had to go and admit that he was wrong. Like, it really was a moment right there. So thankfully, that entire article, that controversial post that Sean O'Connell made, it was deleted, and he has since apologized for making that statement, which is definitely good, which, you know, it's nice to see that the dude learned from his mistakes. Like, he just did a stupid, he graciously took the L, and you know what? That's fine. That's perfectly okay. Everybody would go and make mistakes. You know I've done my mistakes even recently. So, and you know what? Like, it's not often talked about, but when people like accept taking the L, it's often actually an honorable thing. In a way, it, like, you could like graciously take the L for something that you did was wrong, like you admit that you were wrong, and it can actually be viewed as a W. But after all that, though, after all the stupid reactions, rather it be because about the movie talking about periods in a straightforward manner, rather it be stupid responses like what Sean O'Connell did. By the way, isn't Sean O'Connell the name of the guy? Yeah, okay, yeah, so it is Sean O'Connell. Rather it be what Sean O'Connell said, or the usual idiots who would keep calling it woke because of their bigoted ideologies. But then there was one person who stepped in, who decided that those were not enough. There needs to be something much more to be said. A take that is considered to be what could debatably be considered the worst take of the year. And that has to be from none other than a YouTube cartoon reviewer by the name of the mysterious Mr. Enter, in which Mr. Enter had a problem not necessarily with the race of the character, not necessarily that it talks about periods, but more specifically that it lacks 9/11. Yes, because of the fact that Turning Red is specifically set in the early 2000s, he complained that the lack of acknowledgement that 9/11 happened seems to be a detriment to the feature film. Specifically, what he has stated, I'm going to read from my source here on Forbes. Mr. Enter said, the film takes place less than a year after the September 11 terrorist attacks. I bring this up because it radically altered the culture of the time in ways that makes this movie feel exceptionally ignorant of the time. Even though literally the only reason I could comprehend this movie is set explicitly in 2002 is because the director grew up in that exact year. So, and from there, I've already talked about this before, of course, but of course, it pretty much led to one of the most popular memes that happened in 2022, in which now people would go and humorously associate Turning Red with 9/11, like to pretty much cater to Mr. Enter's needs and to go and fill the movie with a whole bunch of different 9/11 references. And well, his response, let's just say that it's a good thing that Sean O'Connell graciously took the L, because Mr. Enter didn't, and his reputation really crumbled this year. And like, this is not even to mention how it really ruined his reputation as a reviewer, and even like the numbers that he would get on YouTube, they have significantly been reduced. He, in fact, on his YouTube channel, he actually lost over 10,000 subscribers because of what he had done and because of the response that he had made on in regards to the whole controversy. So the big reason why I want to go and add this onto the number 5 spot is mainly because of the lesson that we would learn, or because of what has happened with all the different responses to Turning Red. And the lesson that we have here is that it's not necessarily the opinion itself that can be the problem. It's actually the context of the opinion why people would go and be upset over what the person would go and say. Now, I'm going to say this right now. If you have a problem with Turning Red, if you don't like it as much as other people do, that's perfectly fine. You do you. Your opinion is your opinion and no one else's. How you personally feel about watching the feature could definitely be different than anyone else's. You just have to have a good explanation as to why you go and feel that way if you want to go and express others why you feel a specific way about that movie compared to how other people would go and feel about it. And this is exactly what we have seen with Turning Red, because with these negative reviews and these negative responses towards Turning Red, a lot of them seem to not make sense whatsoever. And it just sounds like the person is like literally looking for reasons to go and be angry and complain about Turning Red or something from Disney, like to like find a desperate excuse to go and hate Disney, to go and hate Pixar, or to hate this feature in particular. Like, number one, let's get into the period aspect. Like, honestly, I know that there's been a long history that people would consider the subject of periods to be very taboo, or the subject of puberty, especially when educating it towards children or kids who are younger than the age of those who would get periods. And to that, when you actually do think about it, you have to wonder, is it really that controversial? Is it really something that is that problematic? Because the thing is, everybody with a vagina goes through having a period. Like, if you do have a vagina, then that's perfectly normal. It comes with the package. Again, everybody with a vagina goes through that. And I mean, why not educate that to children? Why not explain to them what the human body would do and what the human body would go through on a regular basis? Like, yeah, why don't you actually go and educate that? I feel like, honestly, the only reason why you would hear many parents be upset about it is because they don't want to actually do their jobs as a parent to go educate kids about what is a period. Like, maybe the problem is just more you as a parent. Maybe you're just not ready to become a parent in the first place, than to actually go and tell the truth to kids. Like, why hold that logic back? Why do you have to go and, like, not actually explain to them how the human body works? It's natural. It's okay. And again, everybody with a vagina goes through that. And then there is the argument that Sean O'Connell made. The fact that he could not connect with Turning Red because the lead is this Asian teenage girl from Toronto. And at that point, like, even though he did learn his lesson, he did understood that his comment was wrong, it is a very ignorant thing to say. It just makes it sound like you as an individual are incapable of seeing what is on the surface of a person. The fact that there's this barrier that this barrier that holds you back, that is in relation to race and to gender, then yeah, it does make you sound a little bit like a bigot. That it does make you sound like you are either racist or that you're misogynist, and that you're incapable of comprehending the feature because the lead is not exactly like you. The fact that the lead is not a white male, and somehow that makes it all woke and stuff like that. And I will get a little bit more into that later, but that's also another major problem, is how people would go and refer to that as woke. And that's why Sean O'Connell received so much backlash from that comment. It's because of the fact that he sounded extremely ignorant, and that he's going into these shallow excuses to not really go and connect with Turning Red. But again, it is good that he did acknowledge his mistakes. He was aware that he was just being ignorant and that he was in the wrong for saying that, and that he did apologize. So honestly, I'm not going to hold anything against him. Like, yeah, it was a stupid thing that he has done, but I'm glad that he did learn his lesson. And then there's the mysterious Mr. Enter, which honestly, you've most likely heard me rant about that entire scenario with him being angry with Turning Red because it doesn't mention 9/11. In fact, I put up a highlight video, which right now, it is the most popular video on the AniMat's Crazy Cartoon Cast YouTube channel that you could go and find. So honestly, for me, that's actually very exciting to see. And I'm glad that it did get that positive response and it did get a lot of attention to be aware that the problem really is a lot more in relation to Mr. Enter than it really is the problem of the fact that it lacks 9/11. Because the thing is, this is supposed to be like this fictional world where girls can actually transform into giant red pandas. Why do we need to acknowledge 9/11? And especially speaking as a Canadian myself, who did grow up in the early 2000s, yeah, it was like, we are aware that 9/11 was a pretty tragic thing that happened, but it's not going to stop us from continuously living our lives. Like, honestly, the way that they portrayed it, they portrayed life in Turning Red, it's pretty accurate to real life. That's pretty much what happened during the early 2000s or around the Canadian area, like Toronto or in Montreal. And honestly, it really just sounds like he's just so desperate to find something to nitpick or to go and complain about. Like, maybe 9/11 made much more of an impact for him, more so than like in the movie itself, but still though, it just sounds like a really pointless nitpick, and it just sounds like you're bringing up something that's like completely unrelated just to go and take off some points on the feature film itself. And by the way, there is one more thing that I do want to go and acknowledge, and I do want to go and comment. I know that very recently, apparently, Mr. Enter actually apologized for making that comment in regards to Turning Red and 9/11, that he actually apologized for actually making that comment that did cause the viral meme. Now, from there, do you think that should let Mr. Enter get a pass? You know, be like Sean O'Connell, and that now he has learned his mistakes and now he's like free from any of the backlash that he received from that thing? In my opinion, absolutely not. Because the problem is not necessarily that he made that particular comment. It's honestly his attitude. It's the attitude that he would keep on portraying in his videos, that it just made him, it just really makes him sound like a very pretentious and entitled cynic. The reason why the grand majority of the animation community doesn't take him seriously or do not value any of his opinions whatsoever. And if he fails to go and change that, then honestly, I'm sorry, but that apology means absolutely nothing. If he is incapable of acknowledging how his attitude, how his arrogance really would keep getting the best of him, then honestly, he's going to keep making the same mistakes again and again and again. He needs a massive tune-up in his attitude. The dude seriously has some issues, which is the same, and honestly, it's the same kind of attitude that not only would go and make stupid comments like Turning Red needs 9/11, but it's also the same attitude that would make him say equally stupid things in regards to wearing a mask, in regards to Black Lives Matter, in regards to healthcare, in regards to feminism. Like, this is exactly why nobody would go and take Mr. Enter seriously. And it's honestly baffling how to this day there are still some people would go and actually listen to Mr. Enter as if he knows what he's talking about. It's honestly ridiculous. So honestly, like, really the big thing is that, yeah, he would go and apologize for the Turning Red 9/11 comments, but it just sounds like he's sorry that he said that, which caused his reputation to go down. No, the dude needs to fix himself. It's his attitude, his personality that's a serious problem. if he's not getting the help, if he's not getting the help he needs, if he's not going to therapy, if he's not getting anger management, then honestly, it like just like his YouTube channel, just like his opinions in animation, just like his opinions in general, it's completely worthless. But yeah, honestly, overall, this is just to go and reflect upon all the stupid things that people would go and say in regards to Turning Red, and especially when there are people out there who would keep labeling Turning Red as woke, which at that point, I just need to go and comment, what the fridge do you mean by Turning Red is woke? Because even to this day, there are a lot of far-right personalities who would go and use Turning Red as an example as woke content. But really, what is so woke about it? Like, is it the fact that it would talk about periods? Is it the fact that it stars a woman, or specifically a woman of color? Like, what is it? And I think really it's a big highlight, like Turning Red is a big highlight, or one of the examples that we have seen in 2022 of how this anti-woke movement or these culture wars is doing nothing more but promoting bigotry. That's really all it is. And that honestly, we're pretty much at the point where we need to start challenging these culture wars, and that we need to go and actually confront these people who would label anything as woke. Like, if you would see someone if someone would go and call Turning Red or The Last Jedi or Glass Onion, if they would call that as woke, you need to step up and challenge them. What do you mean by woke? Like, really force out their true opinions. Because the thing is, when they use woke, they use it as a vague term that can literally mean anything. But they know exactly what they do mean, and it's often, or all the time, it's for bigoted reasons. And that's why I highly recommend that you go and read what I consider to be one of the best articles of the year. It's this one from Salon called "Let's All Stop Ignoring the Fandom Menace. It's Real and It's Winning." In which, in this article, it really does go down into how these culture wars and how this anti-woke movement is doing some real world damage, and how these influencers such as Geeks Plus Gamers, The Quartering, Clownfish TV, Nerdrotic, and many, many more would keep using this anti-woke vocabulary in order to go and promote white nationalist propaganda. Even to this day, you would see many of these people try to use this anti-woke language as a white supremacist dog whistle. Like, one prominent example is using Miles Morales is Miles Morales and Peter Parker is Spider-Man, basically saying that people of color are incapable of being superheroes and only white people can be superheroes, that white people are superior than people of color. And again, we need to go and confront these people and call them out for being racist, that they are using their business in order to go and promote hate speech, in order to promote violence, in order to promote harassment, and all that kind of stuff. And again, like, this article really did nail, like the entire vocabulary that they would use and how they would go and use their platform by attacking geek-related content, such as attacking Marvel, like attacking Miss Marvel, or attacking Obi-Wan Kenobi, like attacking Moses Ingram, or attacking Ayman Vanali purely for racist reasons and to keep sending them death threats. So yes, being anti-woke is being a bigot. If you're saying otherwise, well then, what are you doing to go and fight against hate speech? What are you doing to protect people of color, to protect trans people, to protect the LGBTQ plus community, to protect women, to protect Jews, to protect other religions that are not Christians? What are you doing to protect those minority groups from hate speech, from those people who are spreading bigotry? If you're not doing anything, then you are part of the problem. And yes, all people who are anti-woke are violent criminals. They are all violent psychopaths. And if you don't want to be labeled as that, then act like a normal functioning human being and stop bitching about woke culture. So yes, overall, this is to go and say that number 5 is all the bad takes in regards to Turning Red. Okay, so with that said, I would like to go into the chat wall, and I would like to ask, what additional comments would you like to go and make in regards to the entire number 5, in regards to Turning Red? I would like to know what you think on this. All right, let's see what we got. Mr. Enter's take on Turning Red is without a doubt the worst takes I've ever seen or heard. Seriously, Turning Red is a coming-of-age story about a girl turning into a giant red panda. I don't want to think about 9/11, and this honestly made Mr. Enter as one of the worst reviewers on the internet. Although he's still not the worst reviewer on the internet, Misanthropony still holds that title with his terrible take on The Last Jedi. Honestly, I'm not gonna lie, like, I did hear that take that he would go and do, and that he made a response about all the people who criticized him for his takes on The Last Jedi. And there's a part of me that cannot help but laugh, especially with his voice. Like, why does Misanthropony sound like an AI who's programmed to sound like an angry reviewer? Like, seriously, you listen to that video and all he does is like, why are you complaining at me about The Last Jedi? I know that I am right and you people are absolute idiots because the real idiots out there are actually the people who made this movie. This is the worst thing that is ever created. The Last Jedi is objectively worse than Hitler. If you disagree with me, then honestly, you all should die. You should all perish and burn in hell because you don't agree with my opinions. Oh, seriously, it's just absolutely, honestly, there is a part of it that I feel like is funny. Let's see. It is sad that Turning Red gets some backlash from people like Turning Red who can't handle the movie overall in terms of the subject matter. Personally, I find Turning Red a better Pixar movie of 2022 than Lightyear when it comes to expectations and story-wise, but attacking it over the subject of puberty and focusing on a teenage Asian Canadian girl is so unnecessary and no need for this type of backlash. At least the movie is getting some award recognition, so that is good, but the hate has to stop. All right, let's see. I won't let Mr. Enter get off so easily, since he went off on a wild temper tantrum on Twitter with even crazier and viler takes, even going as far as to unironically quote a nihilist space criminal with a huge body count. 2022 shall be the year we will remember as grifters like the Quartering as advocates for genocide against those they deem undesirable, just like the LGBTQ+ community. Oh yeah, absolutely. Let's see, what other comments would we have? Honestly, I think I'll read 2 more before we move on. Here we thought the worst take this movie was going to get would be focused on either the 2000s teen culture or the subject of puberty, but boy, did some people have to prove us wrong. It just seems that as time goes on, people have to try and find even the tiniest and most irrelevant thing to cling onto just to hate on anything. Also, it's kind of funny that you and Enter both made a meme in the same year, but one is easily better than the other. Oh yeah, I think it's safe to say that at least my reputation still got intact when I introduced the world to Pinocchio: A True Story. At least it's not real, at least the meme is not related to how bad of a critic I am. So at least I am thankful for that. All right, so one more quick comment here. Oh, okay. Honestly, it just goes to show how stupid some takes can get. It definitely gets in the way of expressing actual criticism worth discussing. Yeah, you're right. You're definitely right there. And now we're going to go and move on to our number 4. And this is when we're going to go into some of the bigger calamities. Starting things off with a streaming service that was once considered the greatest, but especially in regards to how they've been treating animation, oh boy, they went through a massive fall from grace. All right, so coming in at number 4, we're going to be talking about a specific streaming service that once upon a time was considered the go-to platform in terms of where to find some of the best in animation. In fact, it had a very promising future, hoping that maybe this is where where many big name animators are going to go into their safe haven of creativity, that they would have the freedom to do whatever projects they want on the platform and bring out what could potentially be content that, as they made their promise, could be even greater than Disney. But sadly, that did not seem to be the case. And, oh boy, let's just say that this streaming service had a very tough year. And so, coming in at number 4, we have something that I like to call the animation disillusion of Netflix. Now, the thing is with Netflix is that at the start of the year, they were pretty rough. Like how Twitter and Tesla is right now, at the start of the year or in early 2022, that was Netflix. Because when reports came out that they were losing hundreds of thousands of subscribers, that their total amount was actually going down for the first time, that's when the stocks massively plummeted. Like, it really did feel like it spelled doom for Netflix and that things might not be going well. But then came the news in regards to animation, and oh man, did it really fall apart, and did our perspective on Netflix in terms of their animated content, did it really change? And especially, this is because of this article here from The Wrap called Netflix Animation Erased, Executives Fired, Shows Canceled, and Accusations of Staged Data. And from there, it gave us a peek of what is behind the curtain in the animation sector at Netflix, or more specifically, the animation sector at Netflix that specifically looks into animated TV shows or animated series. Now, this may not necessarily reflect upon what they are doing with their animated features or what they are doing with their adult animated content, but when it comes to animated family-friendly shows, yeah, it did not go well. Like, it's going pretty badly. Like, there was a time when they would go and hire many acclaimed animation stars onto their platform, that they would bring them in to go and work on some big-name shows. But unfortunately, there have been numerous of anticipated ones that ended up being canceled, highly acclaimed shows that ended up stopping on their tracks when they had a good thing going for them. And also, the employees and the people working there, well, they were treated very unfairly, especially when it was revealed that Netflix was really focusing on the numbers. Like, they don't care about the quality of the show itself. They don't care about how many awards it would win, or they don't care about how popular the show is, or like how much it gathered like a fan base or whatever. They only cared about the views. And for Netflix, if your show isn't around the popularity of the Boss Baby series, and yes, they actually use the Boss Baby series as an example of what a show they want to do to go and perform, well, at that point, it is just meaningless. And that's why a lot of them would ultimately go and bail out. People like Craig McCracken, who worked on Cosmic Kid for Netflix, he would go and run off to Warner Brothers, where now he's working on another Powerpuff Girls reboot and a Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends preschool show. And then you would also have other creators, such as the one who worked on City of Ghosts, and just want to go and find that name specifically. Hold on. I know I should have looked at that. Oh yes, Elizabeth Ito, where after City of Ghosts, she immediately bailed out. And then you also have Centaur World, in which the first season actually did very well. Like, audiences loved it. It was getting a lot of praise, but because it didn't get the big numbers that Netflix wanted, well, it looks like season 2 is not really gonna go and exist. In fact, there have been numerous of different projects that ultimately got canceled on Netflix, many of which, well, they were actually in production. Like, they never even got a chance to have a season 1 show up. This is from the article here called Netflix 2022 year in review, the good, the bad, the ugly on the website What's on Netflix. And from there, in the ugly section, that's when they revealed what went wrong with animation and even provided a list of all the shows that ended up getting canceled. And these include Anti-Racist Baby, Bad Crimes, Bone, Boons and Curses, Season 2 of Centaur World, Dino Daycare, Kung Fu Space Punch, Pearl, The Twits, based on the Roald Dahl book, Toil and Trouble, which that one is Lauren Faust's show, Wings of Fire, and With Kind Regards from Kindergarten. And there even is also a lot of controversy in regards to how Netflix was treating their animators in terms of unions. Like, they would go and try to find a loophole in order to not pay the animators more than what they probably should. Like, a great example is in regards to the Cuphead show. One of the more standout series that came out on Netflix this year. And with the Cuphead show, what they did at Netflix is that they would make the animation team work on an entire season's worth, like one full season. And then Netflix would go and divide that into 3 so that they would go and release them separately to make it look like the Cuphead show put out 3 seasons worth of content, when in actuality, it's actually one full season's worth. And the reason why they would do that is that they want to go and pay their animators for 1 season's worth instead of 3 seasons worth. So yeah, it's kind of cheating the system over there. And yeah, it was pretty bad, and why the Animation Guild should go and revise some of their rules so that they can go and strengthen some of the, strengthen some of their regulations so that there wouldn't be those kinds of loopholes in which studios can go and screw over the animators. And I know Netflix is not the only one who does so, but still, they are one of them who does so. But anyways, because of because of what's been happening, because of the reports that have been exposed, because of the subscribers they have been losing, and because of their stocks just plummeting at the time, throughout 2022, we have seen a whole lot of layoffs. We've seen a whole bunch of them. Like, it started back in May, where they had to go and fire 150 employees, almost half of which, 70 of them, were unfortunately animators. And then following afterwards, in the following month, they would go and lay off 300 more people to go and compensate for the stocks that they have lost, or for the numbers that kind of plummeted. And then later on in September, that's when they went and fired an extra 30 employees, specifically at Netflix Animation. And also, one more thing that I do want to go and add on to this is that not every news related to Netflix and animation is all doom and gloom. There was one report that really came out that was some massive news. It was the fact that Netflix officially acquired Animal Logic. And for those of you who don't know, Animal Logic is the prominent animation studio in Australia who is responsible for many visual effects work, including some MCU movies and especially the Matrix films. But what you probably know them the most is actually providing the animation for Happy Feet and the Lego movies. And now they are officially owned by Netflix, where now the only thing they can do is just make Netflix movies. And also kind of an ironic twist of fate, especially the fact that I just realized this year, Animal Logic did put out a brand new animated feature with DC League of Super Pets. So the reason why I put this at number 4 is not only because of the continuous news that we have heard in regards to what's actually been happening behind the scenes at Netflix Animation, which nowadays we could pretty much consider them a major animation studio, or at least with their animation division, but it's because how they used to be considered such an animation utopia. Like, if you remember a few years ago, there was a time when Netflix was like so admired in terms of their animation division, or when they wanted to build up an animation division. And from there, they would go and gather many big and prominent names to go and work on animation for them. You know, people like Jorge Gutierrez, Alex Hirsch, Glenn Keane, Nora Twomey, Craig McCracken, and many, many others. Like, you got all these big animation stars. Now they are going to work for Netflix with the promise that they are going to be developing projects that are going to be focusing a lot more on the creative aspect, and now they can have the freedom to go and do whatever they want on the platform. Like, whatever crazy original idea that they have, they're gonna go and do it there. Now, I know that there are some that I have listed. Technically, they are still working at Netflix today, like Alex Hirsch or Jorge Gutierrez. But nowadays, it feels like that utopia, that vision of Netflix being this anime, you know, kind of like being the Hyperion of today. Yeah, that's pretty much been shattered. And as it turns out, Netflix is really no different than any other scummy animation studio that would focus a lot more on the numbers. And with all the different backlash that we have heard and all the anticipated projects that they have canceled, how we view Netflix today is a lot more different, and unfortunately a lot more negatively compared to how they were before. And I know technically nowadays Netflix, well, they are in a much better position now than they are compared to last year. But honestly, after what we have witnessed this year and all the promises that they have made and what they have done, honestly, I feel like their future is going to be pretty bleak. Like, it's going to be at the point that it's going to be hard to imagine that we are going to have a future with Netflix in the first place. Now, I know it sounds a little extreme, and even though a lot of the things that I have talked about so far, it's just related to their family-friendly animated series sector. Like, a lot of the other stuff that they have done, it's still like going amazingly well. Like, they put out shows like Inside Job and the Cuphead show, which are fantastic. And then the movies, oh my God, this, like, 2022 was the year of Netflix animated movies, like feature films such as Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio, which is starting to become a major competitor during award season. Hold on a sec. Excuse me. Okay. But then also you got Henry Selick's Wendell and Wild. You got Nora Twomey and Cartoon Saloon's My Father's Dragon. You also got The Sea Beast, which ended up making it in the top 10 of the most watched movies on Netflix in 2022. Like, they really went all out with it. And there's a lot of content in animation that they did put out. It turned out fantastic, and it really did help Netflix's image. But I will say the big reason why I personally feel like it's the future of Netflix is not looking good is because of one reason, and one reason only, believe it or not. And that is because of their promise with password sharing. Now, you've probably have heard that Netflix very soon, early this year, they revealed that they are going to ban password sharing, which is going to cause a lot of problems. And I can imagine that there are going to be people out there that they're willing to sacrifice their need to have Netflix in their repertoire of content. Like, if they're not paying for Netflix right now, then they'll most likely be okay with sacrificing the need of watching Netflix, because I don't know any of the numbers, admittedly, but I think it's safe to say that there are a good amount of people who do watch Netflix that do rely on password sharing. And a big reason would be because, well, they can't really financially afford it with how things are becoming more expensive nowadays, especially because of inflation. Some people can't really afford to have Netflix in their catalog, to actually have Netflix as part of their catalog to go and binge watch whatever they want. So at that point, people will be making sacrifices, and I think it's safe to say that we're going to see a lot of numbers drop, or especially in terms of viewership. So yeah, I don't know. Unless Netflix would go and change their minds, or I don't know how they're going to implement this password sharing ban, but if they do so, then it's really not going to look good for the company. But yes, overall though, this is to go and comment about the craziness that has happened in terms of animation, especially with all the layoffs, with all the cheats they tried to do with the unions, and especially with what is revealed in terms of what it's like to work at Netflix Animation, which, as it turns out, if you're making an animated show, it's not looking great. Unless you would go and work for a different company, like either Netflix or Sony, not Netflix, but if you work for like DreamWorks or Sony and Netflix is only going to be distributing it, like maybe that is fine. But directly for Netflix, that's where there are some problems. Now, with that said, I would like to go into the chat wall, and I want to ask you all, how do you all feel about the news related to Netflix and what we have gotten this year? And especially, how do you feel about the future of Netflix? Do you think they're going to be going well? Do you think they're going to be fine? Or do you think the password sharing is going to screw them over like how I feel? Let me know what you think. All right, let's see. This really makes Netflix look bad as a streaming service. It really does feel like they are just paying more attention to the dollar signs more so than the quality of the actual shows themselves. They basically become the streaming service equivalent of Nickelodeon, where they treat most of their animated series like crap. So it's just a mess, although they are still not the worst company treating animation badly, which I'm sure we'll talk about later. Oh, yes, of course, of course. I mean, we are only at number 4, so there's definitely going to be a lot more madness to come. And by the way, yes, I am aware about the recent news in terms of Nickelodeon, where they say that apparently female-led animated programming doesn't do well, or they don't like those kinds of shows or something like that. But I know that recently Netflix is in trouble because of their reactions towards female-led animated shows. So I know that that is a thing. Let's see what else we have here. It is very sad to see Netflix Animation has fallen from grace. They used to be a great animation studio, giving us awesome shows like Kid Cosmic and Centaur World, but they are now coming to a close. It's just a shame that Netflix is no longer what it used to be. It's now going to be very hard when animated series such as MLP Make Your Mark and Sonic Prime would get numbers high as The Boss Baby. Yeah, and I mean, like I said, right now, I know there are some shows on Netflix that are really worth watching, and that is another good example, Sonic Prime, in which apparently a lot of people are very much enjoying it. Apparently, it's turning out to be great. But still, though, it feels like it feels like right now, with what's happening directly on Netflix, yeah, like I know the reports have been a while ago, but still though, hopefully things are getting better with it. Otherwise, yeah, it's going to be troublesome. Let's see. It's such a tragedy that Netflix went from a paragon for animated movies and shows to just disregarding them like they were trash. And the really sad thing isn't just the treatment of their employees and creators, but also them canceling works that many people adore, like Centaur World and Bones. And honestly, I can't take it seriously when Netflix says that the standard for animated shows is The Boss Baby. Yeah, you know, that is kind of the that really is like the crazy thing about all this. It's not necessarily that they would go and cancel shows, but it's the reasoning that they're not as popular as The Boss Baby, which really is unfair, especially with the fact that The Boss Baby is not necessarily a Netflix show. Yes, it's a Netflix exclusive series, but they're not the ones who made it. It is actually the people at DreamWorks Animation. So already there's a massive disadvantage for the people at at Netflix, because now they got to go and compete with another show that another company made that apparently is doing very well on the platform. Ah, man, the coughs are getting at me now. Okay, let's see. Let's see now. Netflix in 2022 was the worst year they have so far, thanks to revelations behind the scenes and losing money on stocks. Sure, movies like Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio and Wendell and Wild, including live action works like Glass Onion and Knives Out Story, came out huge for them, but this was not a good year for them when it comes to losing money. Are they the worst of 2022? Not really. We'll save the other companies later on. Oh, you guys know what I mean. I think I'm going to read two more comments before we go and move on to our next one. On the password sharing ban thing, this is pretty stupid. My family and I share passwords to 6 different streaming services between the 5 of us. Netflix had so much potential, but it's clear that their future doesn't look too bright. It's awful that Netflix is trying so hard to cheat the animators and unions and want to make specific guidelines so they won't cheat. All right, and one more comment. Looks like Netflix is becoming the Nickelodeon of streaming services because they want a show that is as popular as The Boss Baby and SpongeBob. I am mad that Bone got canceled after many years of different studios to get on the screen. Bone used to be my anticipated Netflix series. I still have Netflix subscription to play Cat Burglar and watch Pinocchio. All right, so I think with that said now, we will go and take a quick break, and I'll go and make my throat a little better after those coughs. But for our number 3 spot, we're gonna go and lighten things up a little bit. We're gonna take a quick break from all these like crazy companies being completely chaotic and stuff like that, and we're gonna go and look back at some of the biggest discoveries of the year. Whew, I am so thankful for these breaks. Honestly, I really do need them, especially to go and clear my throat, make sure I get some of the cold aspects out of the way. But anyways, okay, so now that we are back, it is now time that we will go and talk about number 3. And with this one, we are going to be talking about some discoveries that have been made. But the reason why I put it in here is because, well, these discoveries have happened more often than usual. And it's not just the amount of discoveries that have been made, but it's also what specifically has been discovered, because they have been some major deals. And coming in at number 3, what we got over here is something I like to call Lost and Found. The big significance with 2022 is that more often than usual, we have actually got a whole lot of lost media that have actually been discovered. Some that we thought we would never see the light of day, but suddenly it would just appear out of nowhere, or some that ended up getting a second chance. Now, the biggest animated discoveries that we have gotten this year include Nimona, in which that was supposed to be an animated movie produced by Blue Sky Studios, but then when Blue Sky shut down, well, Nimona ended up getting canceled, obviously, because the studio working on it no longer exists. Fudge nabbit, I thought I solved that problem. But anyways, yeah, for a while, we thought that Nimona would end up being canceled, that we would not have the movie anymore, and with many of its progressive themes, including a legitimate gay kiss scene right in front of the camera that we would see actually happen between 2 guys, it was a massive loss that many people were very much upset about. But then, well, ironically enough, after what we just talked about, Netflix came in and decided to team up with Annapurna in order to go and revive Nimona, in which now they have revealed that the production of the feature is coming back on, and we will be receiving this movie later this year. So it is officially going to happen. But then later on, this next one may not necessarily be animation related, but the reason why it is worth talking about is because of the fact that some people would go and consider this to be not just the most famous piece of lost media, but also the holy grail of lost media. And what I'm talking about is the Wicked Witch episode of Sesame Street, specifically the Sesame Street episode in which it starred Margaret Hamilton, aka the Wicked Witch of the West from the 1939 classic The Wizard of Oz. The episode in which it was considered to be way too scary for children and that Sesame Workshop kept in the vaults for a long time. Like, this is the Sesame Street Workshop equivalent of Song of the South. But it looked like there was one person who decided to take the entire episode and upload it in its entirety onto the internet for the entire world to see. Now, there have been some clips that did get revealed from time to time on the internet in the past, but seeing the episode in its entirety from beginning to end, that was something that was never done before. And that was a massive, noteworthy discovery. In fact, some people would go and say it is the biggest lost media that was discovered in 2022. Excuse me. And then, moving on to August, there have been a few more discoveries that have been made. And what I would say is the most unexpected one is actually in regards to the canceled Popeye movie. Yes, in which an anonymous user decided to say, what the fridge, I'll just go and upload the entirety of Sony Animation's canceled Popeye movie that would have been directed by Genndy Tartakovsky. And they decided to just go and put it all up. Now, of course, it wasn't a complete movie. It was actually just the animatic of the feature. And from there, they would go and upload it, show the whole world what it is. Now, it did not necessarily last long because a few days later, Sony stepped in to go and take it down immediately. But still, though, it gave audiences a glimpse of what could have been. What was the story that they have developed for this Popeye movie? And then a few weeks later, a YouTuber, specifically by the name of Ray Mona, made another major discovery of their own, in which they decided to go and upload the American Saban pilot of Sailor Moon. Yes, there actually was an animated series of Sailor Moon, or an American animated series of Sailor Moon that would have been uploaded. And funny enough, it was actually a live action animation hybrid. And I think it is safe to say that, well, it would have been a lot more different than what we have gotten with the Japanese animated series. And honestly, I don't know about you, but I think it's one of the rare moments in which the American version ended up becoming a lot weirder than the Japanese version. Because even this, like, even just looking at this picture kind of perplexes my brain. And then finally, one more major discovery that has been made this year was actually from the creator of this piece of lost media, Seth Kearsley, in which he has actually discovered from his own files and actually managed to go and convert it to go and put it up on the internet, the lost pilot episode for the canceled animated series of Kingdom Hearts. Yes, the director of 8 Crazy Nights, originally he worked at Disney Television Animation in order to go and create an animated series inspired by the 2002 Square Enix game Kingdom Hearts. And from there, well, it didn't necessarily happen, but several years later, after we have heard a lot of different stories and reports in relation to Kingdom Hearts, or to the Kingdom Hearts series, well, it was another moment in which Seth Kearsley decided to say, what the fridge, I'm just gonna go and upload it. And from there have been plenty of other animated discoveries that have been made, of course. And I do have a list, by the way, the other animated content that have been discovered that was once considered lost media. They include How the Hamsters Save Winter, Twinkle the Dream Being, Quantum Quest, the original British Scatoonie, The Mouse Factory, the uncensored version of the Fat Albert episode Busted, Kung Fu Wa test pilot, the missing episodes of Video Mods, the Nicktoons zombie bumpers, the SpongeBob Got Milk commercial, the robotic Stooge episode, of Curly of the Apes, and finally, Betty Boop's Honest Love and True and At the Concert. And by the way, big shout out to Blame It on Jorge, who actually compiled a 2-hour video that he uploaded a few weeks ago, or very recently, in regards to all the lost media that has been discovered in 2022. Now, the ones that I've highlighted here, they're just a few samples compared to all the things that have actually been discovered. Now, like I said before, the big reason why this made it up to number 3 is not just because of the amount of discoveries that we have made, but also just how big these discoveries are. The fact that rather it be like an official big deal of a dead project that's coming to life like Nimona, or that we have gotten projects that would never see the light of day, but we got a bit of a taste of what they would be, like the Popeye movie or the Kingdom Hearts pilot. You know, honestly, they really are fascinating, and they really are worth noting for animation history. Like, it gave public, like, even though a lot of them are unintentional or they're not meant to be seen by the public, and that companies try to keep that hiding as a secret, it gave us a look into what could have been. And a lot of these are like big name projects, and a lot of them would have been like highly anticipated. Like, imagine the big deal that it would have made with the Kingdom Hearts series, or imagine like you probably remember back like almost a decade ago, the amount of hype that went behind Genndy Tartakovsky's Popeye movie from Sony Pictures Animation. Like, you get a lot of a taste of what could have been, but ultimately it just never happened. But it gave us an interesting look into, like, maybe they could have been great, maybe they could have been worthwhile, or like, if we did happen, what would they look like? And it pretty much helped answer some major questions. Now, honestly, in my opinion, like, in terms of how they actually turned out, a lot of them would be like, I'm not saying that these are amazing discoveries. These are things that I'm going to be like so mad about that they never turn out into reality. Like, honestly, like, the Popeye movie was at best okay in terms of the ideas that they would have with it, or even the Kingdom Hearts series. It's like, it's fine. Nothing like too spectacular. It's like, it's all right. But, you know, they were cool. You know, like, they are cool novelties, though. Like, they are interesting to see what would happen if they do come to life, you know? Like, yeah, they won't have a chance to have, like, you know, they won't have a chance to become full into reality in the veins of Nimona, but still, though, it is still very interesting to see them be rediscovered, or to actually have, like, a public access view as to what they actually are. You know, they are very much fascinating, and I think it's more for historical purposes. It's more to go and collect the history of it, to go and remind us, like, what they would have been. It's like, it's a very special note, like, you know, for like the history of Popeye, or for the history of Kingdom Hearts, they are worth mentioning. And now that we have gotten a lot more detail as to what they are, it gives us a bit of a helpful glimpse to go and understand what we could have had. Maybe it's for the best that they would have been canceled, and some provided some examples that, yeah, maybe we wouldn't need a Popeye movie, or maybe we wouldn't need an American Sailor Moon series. But still, though, overall, it is still fascinating, and it's more for the historical context of it all, why it is so amazing to see, you know, to understand why they're never being seen the light of day, why they ended up getting canceled, or why they ended up getting scrapped, or whatever. Still, like, for historical purposes, it's just fascinating to see all this happen. I know I don't necessarily have a whole lot to say, and maybe I'm at the point where I'm just repeating myself with all this, but it is still worth mentioning how these big projects got discovered across 2022. And I don't think there's going to be a year where we will have as much big name discoveries as we have as we did in 2022. I think that's going to be a very significant year in terms of lost media. All right, so with that said, I would like to go into the chat wall, and I want to ask you all, how do you feel about all the lost media that has been discovered? And what would you say is your biggest highlight in terms of the lost media that's been discovered in 2022? What was your biggest discovery? Let me know what you think. Let's see now. These definitely feel like major wins for animation. It's really awesome to see more and more lost media being discovered. For me, honestly, for the most happy that I am is Nimona being revived by Netflix. Some of my other favorite lost media that was discovered this year includes the Kingdom Hearts animated series and the SpongeBob chocolate milk commercial. So overall, these are great discoveries, and I hope more lost media will be discovered in the future. All right, now let's see what we got here. Well, at least we have good news this year and not just failures from reviewers, streaming, and CEOs. Sesame Street Wicked Witch episode, worth it. Popeye, somebody took a career-ending risk. I hope it was worth it. Nimona, Netflix did something right. American Sailor Moon, not worth it, but nice discovery. Unfortunately, studios are going to be more involved in keeping canceled or unpopular media lost. Some have slipped through the cracks, but it'll be more financially crucial media gets destroyed. Oh yeah, that's probably going to be one takeaway for companies in terms of all this lost media, that they are going to be more secure in terms of the content that they would make, especially the content that would never end up getting produced. Like they will be sure, and they will be a lot more strict in their contracts to ensure that nothing gets slipped away, nothing gets revealed, even if they would end up getting lost or canceled or whatever. Because I'm sure there's a lot of copyright or a lot of NDA regulations that have been broken when they would go and do these crazy moves like this. But still, though, that's why I'm saying that this is why we may never see another year like 2022 in terms of lost media, where, yeah, I think this, like, the only one who took an L on this are the companies like Sony Animation or Disney with Kingdom Hearts or stuff like that. Like, honestly, they're going to be a lot more, they're going to be a lot more strict, and they're going to be a lot, they're going to be a lot more secure when it comes to the media that they would go and produce, whether it be stuff that would end up getting released or those that do not. Let's see. This really was a year for lost media outside of Pinocchio, memes, and biopic films. A Sailor Moon project I never heard of, a pilot episode of Kingdom Hearts that I almost never heard of, the Popeye movie that could have been good, a Wicked Witch episode that is now in public, and an Nimona movie that will be coming out on Netflix this year in 2023. That is big now that I think about it. Exactly. Now you understand why it is on this list, why it is at number 3. Let's see. I always find it funny that there are so many people try their best to find all these lost media, but suddenly some person just goes, hey, check out this ancient relic I have in my closet. Even so, it is always fascinating whenever we discover these lost media, as it doesn't just let us see so many of the details about them, but it will also give us a chance to watch them after they were thought to be lost forever. Now let's see if Nimona will slap Disney on the face for canceling them. Oh, that's definitely going to be something that we will be keeping an eye out for. That is for sure. But yeah, sometimes it's crazy how, like, the biggest discoveries are made in the simplest of ways. Like, you'll just get one random person in which they'll find in their closet, like, oh, hey, look at this thing. Like, I remember on YouTube, like, I was just scrolling around while I was sick, and I saw there was a video, which was a clip from an Antique Roadshow about this guy who went through the closet of his aunt, and he discovered the puppets from Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. Yes, the Rankin-Bass special. Like, a puppet of Rudolph and a puppet of Santa. So yeah, sometimes, like, the biggest discoveries can be made in the simplest of ways. Let's see what else we got here. My reaction to Lost Media of 2022. Nimona, I'm glad that Netflix got the rights for the movie instead of Blue Sky. Sesame Street Lost episode, I've watched the episode and it was not really that scary. Well, yeah, you're not a child, you're not like a 5-year-old kid, so of course it wouldn't be that scary. Sony Animation's Popeye, I've already watched the movie and it was not bad, not a good movie. At least I did enjoy Tom Kenny as Popeye. Saban's Sailor Moon, I've never watched the pilot, but I did get a look at the intro of it. And Kingdom Hearts series, this would have been a good anime. Well, not really an anime, it was an animated series made in the West. Let's see, what other comments do we have here? I'm very happy that Lost Media is found throughout 2022. One of the highlights for me is the Wicked Witch episode of Sesame Street, SpongeBob Got Milk commercial, the Hamsterdam Saves Winter movie, Popeye, and Nimona. Especially the latter, where Netflix can be the unsung heroes during the whole snafu that we had in 2022. Can't wait to watch it when it comes out later this year. Yeah, the hype for Nimona is already on, I see. All right, I think I'm going to go and read one more comment before we move on to the next one. Let's see what we have. I think I'll go with, I'll go with you, actually. 2022 was a really fascinating year of finding canceled projects. It is fascinating how more and more canceled projects are being discovered. Some of my favorite discoveries are Nimona coming out on Netflix, the canceled Popeye movie being found, the pilot of the canceled Kingdom Hearts, and my favorite of them all, the Wicked Witch episode. It really is fascinating how these projects could have been and how these people found them. Oh yes, we've definitely had some wonderful discoveries. But now let's go and move on higher on our list as we get into number 2, as we are going to go and take a look at possibly the most talked about CEO of 2022 that just caused a whole lot of calamities. Actually, scratch that. The most talked about CEO that caused a whole lot of calamities in 2022 that isn't Elon Musk. All right, now coming in at number 2 on the list. Yes, we are getting higher and higher, and you will see that this list is going to get more and more chaotic. And for this one in particular, we are going to be focusing on a specific CEO, one that has been often talked about and one that has often been hated. Now, this was supposed to be his year to really prove that he is the man in charge, that he could really lead one of the biggest entertainment companies in the world to propel them even higher than what happened before, and that they could really recover after the pandemic. But oh no, that is not what happened. What happened instead is what could possibly lead to the worst CEO in Disney's history. So coming in at number 2, we have the Bob Chapek Saga. Now, this was supposed to be Bob Chapek's year to really prove that he could truly be Disney's next big CEO, especially with the fact that after 2021, Bob Iger, the former CEO, officially left the company. Now, despite the fact that Bob Chapek, he was named the CEO of the Walt Disney Company back in February of 2020, just before the pandemic hit globally, Bob Iger still stuck around, like he still stayed to ensure that things were going fine with the company, and especially handling some of the creative aspect, where he tried to make sure that the company was stable during the pandemic. And then in 2021, that's when he was officially out, and Bob Chapek is now in 100% control. But then his first true test actually occurred in March, in which Florida introduced a brand new and very bigoted bill, in which it was hated by the majority, called the Don't Say Gay bill, in which the purpose of it is to go limit the rights and to censor the LGBTQ plus community. And considering that Disney, other than, well, the Florida government, is the biggest entity and the most powerful entity in Florida, people were begging for Disney to go and make a response to speak against this bill, especially demanding Bob Chapek to actually go and take action, to go and do something about it. And what did Bob Chapek do? Well, he decided to go and put out this statement. Reading from my source here on The Hollywood Reporter, it says, "I want to be crystal clear. I and the entire leadership team unequivocally stand in support of our LGBTQ plus employees, their families, and their communities. And we are committed to creating a more inclusive company and world. We share the same goal of a more tolerant, respectful world. Where we may differ is in the tactics to get there. And because this struggle is much bigger than any one bill in any one state, I believe the best way for our company to bring about lasting change is through the inspiring content we produce, the welcoming culture we create, and the diverse community organizations we support." So basically, Bob Chapek, like, he just stood up and he just went, like, this is basically thoughts and prayers. Like, literally do nothing about it, just send his kind regards, and just put out pretty little words. But obviously, that was not enough. Like, people were demanding that Disney would go and take action, that Bob Chapek would actually stand up against the Florida Republican government, who tried to go and attack the rights of the LGBTQ plus community. And it wasn't until when it was too little too late, when the bill officially passed by law, and that Bob Chapek decided, okay, now's the time I'm going to go and actually say something, in which he made an apology to say that, oh, I could have done better. I wish I were a better leader for you all and stuff like that. And he tried to go and send a donation to the Human Rights Campaign. In fact, it even stated on my source on Variety that he sent $5 million to the Human Rights Campaign, but they actually rejected it because it just sounded like Bob Chapek just wanted to go and save face. You know, he wanted to go and try to make an action to save his reputation more so than it is to save the rights of the LGBTQ plus community. And from there, that's when Bob Chapek said that he would go and take action, that he would go and do something about it the next time there's other bigoted Republican politicians that would go and make similar kind of laws that would go and restrict the rights of the LGBTQ plus community. Now, of course, the allies and the people of the LGBTQ plus community, basically the majority of people, were already upset with Bob Chapek. But then you also got the conservatives and the people who are bigoted against the LGBTQ plus community. Now they got massively upset. Like, they got seriously triggered towards Bob Chapek and towards the Walt Disney Company, where as a result of this moment, Disney became the conservative enemy number one. Like, throughout the year, most of the attacks on in relation to like culture wars against woke culture and really to fuel up the conservative base was all against Disney, attacking all the properties that they would go release, like attack all their movies, attack all the shows they put out on Disney Plus, attack all the Marvel content that they would release, like Miss Marvel, Thor: Love and Thunder, and Black Panther: Wakanda Forever, and especially the Star Wars stuff. Like, I've already talked about how anti-woke people would go and send death threats and attack Moses Ingram because she's a black woman in a Star Wars property. And from there, it just became like a massive mess. Like, it just ended up turning into a major PR nightmare where to this day, Disney is still suffering from because of the poor response that Bob Chapek would go and put out. And throughout and also there's another thing that's worth mentioning It's all the threats made by Republican politicians where they would go and implement laws that would go against Disney and like try to screw them over as a company, including putting laws that would go restrict copyright and would go and try to destroy Disney's copyright, especially with all the reports coming out that apparently Mickey's copyright, like with Steamboat Willie, is about to expire and will soon go to the public domain. Or they would take Disney's special district in Florida, specifically the Reedy Creek district, and they would take away Disney's privileges. Which, by the way, it is worth mentioning that apparently the Florida government is going to backtrack on it, in which early in December last month, it was actually reported that Republican lawmakers and Florida lawmakers, they're about to go and do a massive U-turn on their decision with what they are going to do with the Reedy Creek district. Now, I know that there are people like Ron DeSantis are going to go out and say, no, we're not. Those reports are not true. We're not doing that to Disney. But I'm just saying, if there's one group of people who are more known for lying than politicians, it's Republican politicians. So honestly, I ain't buying what Ron DeSantis is saying. I know for a fact that those politicians are going to take a U-turn and they're not going to do damage to Disney. They just want to do it in order to go and save face. They just want to do it to present the illusion of fighting against woke culture. That's all it is. It's to keep their base aligned and to keep their voters on their side, to make it look like they're actually fighting against woke culture, when in reality, they ain't doing jack all on Reedy Creek. I'm saying it right now. I believe they will do that U-turn. They just don't want to admit it because then it would look like, oh, they're losing to woke culture or whatever. But that's not all, though. Moving forward, as Bob Chapek's reputation kept on disintegrating, there was one interview with the Wall Street Journal that they would go and release, in which they would have a massive talk with Bob Chapek, especially in terms with how things are going with their company. In regards to his image as a CEO, how things are going with their movies and TV shows, how things are going with Disney Plus, how things are going with the theme parks, and also, apparently, as this title says, debating whether if it's possible that Disney is just too woke. Which, again, I need to ask, what the fridge are you talking about being too woke? Can you please specify? But in this case here, man, did it do more damage on Bob Chapek's image. Oh my God, did it really go south from there? Because with Bob Chapek, apparently with his responses, it really sounded like he just did not care. Like for him, he stated that he didn't care about how many people actually hate him or whatever because his likability doesn't make money. He doesn't care about he doesn't care about what's happening at the Disney parks. He thinks things are going fine with Genie Plus and Lightning Lanes and inflating the prices at the Disney parks, but in reality, it's just making things so much worse, and it's making customers a lot more angry. And also, not to mention, there is the comment where he felt like he doesn't understand why adults would be watching animated movies. So from there, his reputation just went worse and worse and worse. And then there was the massive twist that occurred in November, when it turns out you'd think it would be something that it would be a fanboy's wildest dream, but it happened in reality when Bob Chapek was fired as the CEO and Bob Iger was reinstated back, where they immediately had to go and kick out Bob Chapek, and they brought back Bob Iger to be the CEO for 2 years extra. And then when 2025 occurs, that's when the next new CEO will happen. Now, of course, I think it's easy to describe why is it that this one is in number 2. And that is because of how Bob Chapek really did go down as one of, if not the worst CEO of the Walt Disney Company. where the way that he was handling social issues, the way that he was handling Disney's image, it was just extremely poor, down to the point that it ultimately got him kicked out, and the previous CEO had to step back in order to like calm the waters, in order to like to rebuild Disney's reputation. A little bit like what Bob Iger did when he became CEO to fix up Disney's reputation after the mess that Michael Eisner caused during the later half of his years at Disney. It really was absolutely ridiculous to see this entire situation occur, especially when in the middle of the year, like technically Bob Chapek actually signed a deal with Disney that he would stay there for 3 extra years. But I guess now it ain't gonna happen, and now Bob Iger is going to be in control. And also it's funny to see that even right-wing people are actually happy that Bob Iger is back, especially when they state that, oh, I hate Bob Chapek because he's too woke. He's just too woke. When in reality, no, that's not actually the case. In fact, I would even argue and say that Bob Chapek is just too conservative, where he only cares about the money and that's it. He doesn't care about other people's feelings. He doesn't care about other people's well-being. He only focuses on the money, and everything he does just feels massively disingenuous, and he's just too unapologetic of the fact that he only cares about the money and that's it. Because I can tell you right now, I would argue that Bob Iger is much more quote-unquote woke than Bob Chapek, because during the whole Don't Say Gay bill controversy, like when that thing was publicly announced, Bob Iger immediately made a comment that it was wrong, that the bill is bad, that it is bigoted, and that it should be canceled altogether. Like if Bob Iger was the CEO during that time, oh yeah, he would immediately take action against the Florida government to ensure that the Don't Say Gay bill would happen. He would actually be a powerful force to reckon with, unlike Bob Chapek. So I just want to go and make a quick comment over there. But also, there is one thing that I would like to go and state, and keep in mind, this is just a little bit of a theory, because this is something that me and a friend of mine, we have actually discussed about when this controversy actually happened. And it's actually the real reason as to why Bob Iger got reinstated and Bob Chapek got kicked out. It's not necessarily because Bob Chapek was a terrible CEO. Technically, yes, but that's not the main reason. The main reason is actually because of the recession. Now, you have probably heard from several people that in the future, there's going to be this massive recession that will go and happen, that the pieces are all aligned and that we're all prepared for a massive economic crash, especially with what happened with the pandemic, especially with the war in Ukraine and all that kind of stuff, that we're all going to be crashing down into this major global economic crisis where things are just going to be so bad where it's going to be hard to afford anything. Like maybe it won't be like the Great Depression bad, but we are going to be seeing a reenactment of what happened in back in 2008, or maybe even greater. And so what Disney is doing by bringing back Bob Chapek is that they're preparing themselves for the recession. They don't necessarily trust Bob Chapek with handling the business side of the company, with trying to make sure that the company would be okay during these times. They want to ensure that the company is safe during the whole recession, because let's be honest, in the near future, we are going to see empires fall. We are going to see big name companies like Tesla, like Twitter, like Meta, like Warner Brothers, like many others, that they are going to shut down entirely. They are going to crumble because they are not strong enough to withstand the economic consequences of that recession. So by bringing in Bob Iger, Disney wants to make sure that they could stay economically safe, or that they could survive throughout this recession, that they will go and take a hit like everyone else, and then things would then go and improve once that recession would be over, and that it would be smooth sailing, and that they can go and properly build things back up in order to get themselves back on their feet. That is theoretically the reason. Now, I'm not saying that it is the reason. Again, it is just a theory. I could totally be wrong on that, but there is a possibility that that could actually be the reason. But still, though, back onto the main subject, from what we have seen throughout Bob Chapek's entire experience, the fact that in his year of being a CEO, he just failed cataclysmically in terms of his performance, in terms of his likability, in terms of how he was handling controversies with Disney. It was just a massive mess altogether. And it really is worth noting, and especially to put it at a high spot at number 2. Now, I know that many of you have a lot to say about this, so I would like to go into the chat wall, and I would like to go and ask you all, how do you feel about the entire Bob Chapek saga? How do you feel that he was as a CEO of Disney, and do you think it is the right move to kick him out immediately in order to put in Bob Chapek, to put in Bob Iger, sorry. Let me know what you think on all this. All right, let's see what we got here. I think it's safe to say that Bob Chapek is without a doubt the worst CEO in Disney's history, even more than Michael Eisner's second half as the CEO. Whether it be the Don't Say Gay bill, and especially Bob Chapek's response to animation being for kids, and his treatment to Strange World, it just makes him look bad. But I am glad that Bob Iger is back. Yeah, I guess that is another minor aspect, like talking about Strange World. It really was weird, the lack of marketing that feature film ended up having. Like, why is it that, like, a major Disney animated feature that they barely even gave it as much attention? Now, I know that I've already talked about it before, and there could be many different theories as to why, but it could be highly possible that a big reason was because executives like Bob Chapek told them to underplay the advertising. Let's see now. I'll admit, when Bob Chapek first became Disney CEO, I possibly naively gave him the benefit of the doubt and hoped he'd surprise me by being an actual good leader. But as his tenure continued, it was clear that he had no idea what he was doing and kept running Disney into the ground. Thank goodness Iger returned to his post and got to work saving the company. Let's hope he makes a better pick for his next successor. But the worst part is that Chapek was still a better CEO than Zaslav. Save those comments for later. I'm just saying. Oh boy. I know I just turned 30, but am I at the point that I'm making an old, that I'm gonna go and do like an old man laugh and cough like that? Anyways, CEOs are in general all about the money. Everybody knows that. However, in an entertainment and media company, the CEO has to allow creative freedom for creators. Chapek wasn't involved creatively, but made stupid monetary decisions. His response to the Florida was literally circles without committing to anything other than false reassurances. I find it kind of gross people find Chapek saying animation is for kids more offensive than funding homophobic politicians. Lord almighty. Yeah, and that's one thing I'll say that it is a bit of a hot take, but honestly, I know as much people, I know that people were very much upset of the fact that Bob Chapek said that, oh, animation is for kids and fueled that stereotype, but I'm just saying that has nothing to do with him being kicked out or whatever. Like, I'm sure there are plenty of people who are still working at Disney that still have that stereotypical mindset. You know, even though, like, yeah, that could, like, trigger something in your head and, like, really get offended by that, but really, it's a nothing burger. Really, like, in terms of the business aspect, he loses nothing if he would go and say that. In fact, like, I wouldn't be surprised if Bob Iger would also have that mindset as well. But just because they do have that mindset, that doesn't mean that it, you know, that it calls for like cancellation or whatever. It's not a you know, that has nothing to do with being a factor that, oh, Disney, oh, that, like, we need to kick him out as the CEO. Like, yeah, as much as people would get seriously upset with that kind of comment, that, you know, in truth, it doesn't really affect them in terms of their reputation, rather it be their job as the CEO of Disney or whatever. I'm just saying. Let's see what we got here. What other comments do we have? Throughout all of 2022, Bob Chapek has shown over and over with all of his decisions that the only thing he ever cares about is money. And with those decisions, whether it be raising the prices of everything, the Don't Say Gay bill, Strange Worlds, poor marketing, or saying that animation is for kids, he has caused massive damage to both Disney's reputation and their market. As for now, all we can hope for now is that Bob Iger can repair all of the damage Chapek has done for the company. Yeah, I think that's going to be his big job that he's going to do for 2023. Now, I don't know what he will do in order to fix those problems, but I think that's going to be a factor that we will wait and see with what's going to occur. Let's see. The way how Bob Chapek handles the Walt Disney Company is absolutely terrible throughout the past 2 years. It is so bad that he even negatively affects theme parks and movie divisions like the animation division. All he cares about is money, and that is all. And I am glad that Bob Iger is now back as the CEO of Disney, so he can fix things around before Iger retires again. Oh, let's see now what else we have. Thank God he's gone. From his blatant bigotry to his thoughts on animation, Chapek was dragging Disney through the mud. He seems a lot like Mr. Krabs. Thank anyone else. This just makes the skit where Mickey Mouse loses it and Chapek a lot funnier. Let's see. What other comments do we have? Yeah. Here we go. I'm glad Disney has the balls to get rid of Chapek. He was such a joke to Disney fans like me. He hates animation, and all he wants to do is sleep with money. He loves the money, man, but seriously, I knew he was going to suck. And yes, people did boo at him at the D23 Expo. I was there. Oh yes, I definitely heard about those reports. You know, like maybe it's not on the levels of the boos that Elon Musk got during that comedy show with Dave Chappelle. But still, though, it was funny to see all those different clips about the amount of hate that Bob Chapek was getting. In fact, it was so bad that there have been rumors that were spreading around that Bob Chapek was actually too scared to go and present himself during events like the D23 Expo because he knew he would get those boos. Like, he is well aware that he is very much hated as a CEO, both from the left and from the right politically. So really, it's just a lose-lose situation for him. All right, I'll read one more comment before we move on to our finale, to our number one. Let's see. My goodness, 2022 has been a very hard year for Disney. From Chapek's take on the Don't Say Gay bill to the box office bombs of Lightyear and Strange World, Chapek is so bad as the CEO that it makes Eisner's later years look decent in comparison. Thank God Chapek gets kicked out and Iger is back, and I can only hope that he would fix the problems Chapek left, and Disney would be back on top. All right, folks, well, if you would go and deduct things down into what would be at number one, I think it would be an easy guess. Because at this point, we only have one more story, the number one animation news of 2022. And I know some of you are pretty excited for that moment, but I will say, after this break, that moment shall indeed arrive. And here we are, people. This is it. It is the number one. Oh boy, have we went through a lot of craziness throughout 2022. The stuff with Netflix, with all the stupid takes with Turning Red, with all the lost media that we found, and with all the craziness of Bob Chapek, we now made it to over here. And I just want to say, the Bob Chapek story originally, I was thinking that it was going to be the number one animation news of 2022. That's what I originally placed. But then when I was revising the list and I was checking out all the different things that have happened throughout the year, I realized that, nah, there needs to be something else. There was one other story that occurred that honestly, it's just been happening again and again and again. You probably remember throughout 2022, week after week after week, there was always been one news story related to this company in particular, especially in its newest form right now, and especially with its big mission in order to go and save some cash. Like, it's been so bad that, oh boy, even right now, they're still having some troubles. They're still having some major controversy. And so, folks, the number one animation news of 2022 is, let's say it, folks, Warner Brothers discovers disaster. Yes, Warner Brothers has indeed taken the number one spot. Now, what happened in 2022, the big significant thing is that two companies, specifically Warner Media and Discovery, have now officially merged together in order to go and form Warner Brothers Discovery. And the head of Discovery, David Zaslav, stepped in to be the new leader of this company, to be the new CEO. And from there, they have established that they have one major mission that they have to go and do. Now, Warner Media had a lot of problems over the years. In fact, even over the decades, rather it be with their time with Time Warner, or their time with AOL or whatever, or with AT&T, they've been collecting debt. That's all they've been doing. All it is just collect debt again and again and again, to the point where, as I am recording this, Warner Brothers Discovery has a debt of around $50 billion. So the priority number one that David Zaslav wants to do is to go and save on that debt. And one of the first major controversies that he has caused is with the write-downs. And oh boy, these write-downs, they have been honestly ridiculous. And a big reason for the write-downs, by the way, is actually because one of the big missions that David Zaslav wants to do is actually make a merger, not just with Warner Media and Discovery, but also with their streaming services, HBO Max and Discovery Plus, in which recently they reported that they are going to go and turn it into Max. Not HBO Max, literally just call it Max. And that right there is just a massive mess in itself. But from what David Zaslav and his team at Warner Brothers felt, is that the content that they would make exclusively for HBO Max, well, they don't necessarily make all that much in return, especially with what happened after Zack Snyder's Justice League, where they spent an additional $70 million on it, and they pretty much received nothing in return, not even a boost in subscribers. And from there, they decided to go and start off with major write-offs, especially with two movies in particular called Batgirl and Scoob Holiday Haunt, in which with those two movies, the big reason why it was so controversial that they did a tax write-off on it and ultimately cancel it altogether was the fact that they were almost complete. Like, they were actually very close to be finished, and if they haven't done that, those movies would have actually been released today, and you could go and watch it on HBO Max. But the thing is, with Batgirl and Scoob Holiday Haunt, even if they would go and be, even with these movies, even though they would be like 90% complete, they decided to go and make a tax write-off so that they could go and save around $80 to $90 million each, which of course did receive massive backlash, and it caused Warner Brothers to lose a lot of trust with filmmakers and other production companies. In fact, one casualty that occurred is actually with Legendary Pictures, where even though that's not necessarily the primary reason as to why, this moment right here actually did encourage them to move out of Warner Brothers and to go distribute their future films with Sony Pictures. But that wasn't the only one that they did in order to go and actually try to save up. Now, there have been much more projects that they would go and cancel and completely remove on HBO Max. Rather it be content that has already been released on television or stuff that's been exclusive on HBO Max. A lot of which, by the way, are noted to be animated content. A lot of fan favorites too. Some of these include Infinity Train, Close Enough, Aquaman, King of Atlantis, Summer Camp Island, OKKO, Let's Be Heroes, Mighty Magus Sword, Mao Mao, Heroes of Pure Heart, Uncle Grandpa, Victor and Valentino, Elliot from Earth, and several others as well. Like, there have been a whole lot that they would go remove one by one in order to go and save money on. And even to this day, like, apparently the controversy still continues, where very recently, a few days ago, it was reported that a massive chunk of Looney Tunes cartoons, over 200 episodes, apparently have been completely removed on HBO Max, and even seasons 4 through 6 of the Flintstones are no longer available on HBO Max. So apparently this entire purge of content on the platform still continues to this day. And is it all worth it? Well, apparently, because of all the write-offs and the cancellations and removing content on those respective platforms, like with everything they've been trying to do, apparently it's been reported that so far they've been saving up $3.5 billion. And again, keep in mind that the big total that they got in their debt is $50 billion. So this is just a small fraction, but apparently for them, it's worth it because they ended up saving $3.5 billion. But still, though, all the tax write-offs and all that controversy, that's just the tip of the iceberg in terms of controversies related to Warner Brothers Discovery and all the different decisions that have occurred in there. Because there have been a whole lot more problems that have been revealed. Like one of which being a class action lawsuit that's been happening towards Warner Brothers Discovery because the merger ended up being revealed that, well, they've been making up some numbers in order to make the merger happen. And there are a lot of investors that are massively upset about it and that they felt like they've been screwed over. So that's why this class action lawsuit is happening. And then, of course, we cannot forget to go and mention about DC, and especially towards the end of the year when they revealed that James Gunn and Peter Safran have been in charge and are now taking the positions of being co-chairs and co-CEOs of DC Studios, where their job is to go and hit the reset button on the DC cinematic universe, where they are going to go and completely restart everything. And already it's been pretty controversial with it. And part of James Gunn's job now is to go and deal with one of the most toxic fan bases on the internet, the Snyderverse fanboys, because they know that he is going to completely remove all the Snyder elements from DC. And this even confirms a lot of the cancellations and a lot of the recasts, including the cancellations of movies such as Black Adam 2 and Wonder Woman 3, and even getting rid of Henry Cavill as Superman. So he'll unfortunately no longer be playing as the Man of Steel. And from there, there's even more controversies and more rumors about what's been going on with Warner Brothers. And things have actually been going so bad that there have been rumors that have been spreading around that there is a possibility that if things don't get better, or with the way that David Zaslav is setting things up with Warner Brothers Discovery, that maybe in the future, Warner Brothers Discovery could end up being acquired by Comcast. And it's because of this article right here that ended up spreading that rumor. And it's if I could go and find it, I know they mentioned Comcast somewhere. Ah, yes. They even mention over here, just to go and read from my source on The Hollywood Reporter, it states that given the company's daunting challenges, it has become accepted wisdom at the highest level of the industry that another deal waits in the wings for Warner Brothers Discovery. For reasons related to the complicated structure of that merger, no negotiations can happen until April of 2024. But at that point, many industry observers believe that Comcast's Brian Roberts will make a long-awaited move looking to combine NBC Universal and Warner Brothers Discovery. Now, again, these are just rumors. There is nothing that has been confirmed that this will happen, but so far there are rumors that this could be a thing that could happen. And that is exactly why it is at number one, why this is the biggest animation news, because this is something that not only affects the animation industry, especially with all the crazy things that have been happening. Like what I've just mentioned here, that's only part of the madness that occurred with Warner Brothers Discovery. Like, it really is, like, throughout 2022, it really did feel like week after week after week, I would have at least one story in relation to Warner Brothers Discovery, that there is something to go and report about an update in terms of the craziness that would go and occur. And to this day, it is still going on, especially with what's been happening with the DC side of things, in which Peter Safran and James Gunn are now responsible to try to go and deliver a new version of the DC cinematic universe, that they're going to go and try to make a proper reboot and a proper update to it, along with a major 10-year plan to go and get rid of all the elements that did not work with the Snyder version of it and try to implement a better new version in the hopes that the results could turn out to be a bit better, kind of like the reception of the Suicide Squad. And to this day, we're still seeing this massive war that the Snyderverse fanboys are having, that to the point like now they're just commonly sending death threats to James Gunn, that now they're just attacking him again and again, that they view him as the enemy and want to take him down so that their version of the Snyder, this Snyder version of the DC cinematic universe, like, would be fulfilled and all that kind of stupid crap and whatever. Like, it really is at the point where everything is just so chaotic, and it's hard to know, like, what is real and what isn't in terms of the rumors. Because honestly, this entire situation has gone completely chaotic to the point that anything can be possible. And yes, even the rumors about the merger, like the possible merger in the future of NBC Universal and Warner Brothers Discovery, it seems possible. It seems like a valid option, because it does seem like David Zaslav is steering Warner Brothers Discovery to head towards that direction. And what the fridge is going to happen with their streaming service, with this Max thing that they got going on, I have absolutely no idea. And it's crazy because HBO Max used to have a very solid reputation. Yeah, maybe they're not the most popular in the leagues of Netflix or Disney Plus or Amazon Prime or whatever, but they still had a solid reputation that many people looked up upon and actually did enjoy the content that would come out of HBO Max, or the way that they would handle their legacy collection, or the way that they would go and handle brand new content. Like, people were really enjoying that. But then suddenly, when David Zaslav stepped in and the merger happened, everything just felt like it was just falling into pieces. Like, everything is just so broken down that content is starting to disappear left and right. And we have no idea if Max really is going to be that streaming service that would be promised to be just a fusion of HBO Max and Discovery Plus and whatever. It feels like right now it's going to be shaped up into something that's completely different and might not necessarily seem so appealing. It's going to be at the point where everything about this entire situation is so ridiculous. And I wouldn't be surprised if following afterwards in 2023, this will not be the last that we will hear from it, especially in terms of what they are going to do in terms of trying to save money, because that's ultimately the biggest goal that David Zaslav and Warner Brothers Discovery has right now, is to go and to pay off the debt, to save up as much as possible so that that $50 billion debt would just go and disappear, that they don't have to worry about that right now, and that they could go and continue forward trying to actually go and make profits, to go and make successful franchises, which honestly, they're even having a hard time with that, especially with how they have no idea with what they can do with DC right now. That thing is a complete mess. I mean, yeah, there have been some hits that did come out of it, even recently with the Batman. Like, that so far has been doing very well for them. But in terms of trying to make a cinematic universe that can compete against Marvel, like, it's been a disaster. Like, even with Black Adam, that turned out to be a massive flop, that reports even came out saying that there's a possibility it could lose up to $100 million, which is extremely problematic for Warner Brothers because, yeah, collecting more debt and losing more money, that's going to be a much bigger issue in the long run. So yeah, honestly, just going through week after week after week of all this insanity and knowing that we are going to get more and more of this insanity in the future coming in 2023, that's why it is at number one. It's just going through this entire news, just going through all these reports about David Zaslav trying to make these money-saving practices that are just completely bonkers, to the point that it's just ruining more and more of Warner Brothers Discovery's reputation, to the point that it feels like, yeah, they're going to do short-term savings, but in the long run, it's going to completely destroy them. Who the fridge knows that of what's going to happen in Warner Brothers Discovery's future? But we do know that if there's one thing that we are going to remember the most about what happened in 2022, at least in terms of animation and in terms of entertainment, it's with Warner Brothers Discovery. And with that said, I want to go and pass this on to the chat wall, and I would like to ask you, how do you feel about all the news with Warner Brothers Discovery? Do you feel like it deserves the number one spot of the biggest animation news of 2022? And what specifically would you say is the craziest moment with Warner Brothers Discovery in 2022? Let me know what you think. All right, let's see now. Out of all the worst companies in 2022, Warner Brothers Discovery is the worst. Right after the merge, David Zaslav and his team at Warner Brothers Discovery decided to make things worse, like canceling completed films and shows like Batgirl, removing content from HBO Max, keeping Ezra Miller for The Flash. Oh, I forgot about that one. Losing filmmakers and companies like Legendary moving to Sony, etc. It is such a disaster to the point that Warner Brothers may not even run as an independent studio for long, as Comcast might buy them out. What a mess for Warner Brothers Discovery they're in. And that is another thing worth mentioning. Oh my God, the Ezra Miller thing. Like, that is another thing that became pretty bad for Warner Brothers Discovery. And that is with the factor of Ezra Miller, that despite the fact that again and again he has been proven to be like this very mentally unstable criminal, Warner Brothers was so desperate to try to keep him, to try to keep him safe, to try to keep him away from facing any consequences, and that they would go and save their big Flash movie that they want to go and release in 2023. And that's the craziest part, that Ezra Miller kept on doing these insane things and committing these criminal acts because he felt like he was invincible, because he knew that Warner Brothers would protect him and that they would go and release his Flash movie regardless. It's because of that mentality. It's because, like, Warner Brothers was pretty much enabling Ezra Miller to be a godforsaken criminal. And that is why I am hoping that Spider-Verse and Elemental can go take down that movie to make The Flash a massive flop, and that people would go and instead watch other feature films like Across the Spider-Verse or Elemental, or even some of the movies that are like a little bit more distant from The Flash, like the Little Mermaid remake or the 5th Indiana Jones movie. So that is another thing worth mentioning. Yeah. The whole situation with Ezra Miller, oh my God, that's like another piece of chaos right there. Well, let's see. And now we have reached the one company that has haunted Matt's podcast over and over and over again. Warner Brothers Discovery has done so many bad decisions that I don't even know where to start. With all the cancellations, tax write-offs, sexism, Ezra Miller, the Snyderverse, and especially the poor treatment of their franchises, the only thing I'm shocked at this point is that Warner Brothers Discovery hasn't crashed yet. Ultimately, the moral of this story is one thing. Screw David Zaslav. Oh, yeah. Oh, my God. Yeah, it's just, again, it's something that happened again and again and again. Like, I know it just sounded so repetitive that I just kept on talking about Warner Brothers Discovery, but could you guys blame me? Could you all blame me for the insanity that's been causing at Warner Brothers Discovery? They are worth talking about. They really do emphasize the crazy in AniMat's crazy cartoon cast. Well, let's see. I was very disappointed for my favorite show had been canceled, including Summer Camp Island. David Slash Slav, that is what I'm calling him, is basically like the Smaug of animation. Killing every cartoon in some animated series survived. Also, I feel bad for Henry Cavill not playing the role of Superman because he deserved the credit. And why is Warner Brothers so obsessed with making the Flash movie happen? I feel like they're trying so hard to have Ezra Miller be in the movie. Let's see what else we got. This is without a doubt the worst merger in a company's history, even more than the Disney-Fox deal. For their treatment to animation creators, completely removing content from HBO Max and canceling Batgirl, but keeping The Flash despite Ezra Miller being a criminal, is just destroying their reputation overall. The only good thing I see coming out of this is James Gunn being in charge of DC to make the Snyderverse fanboys shut up once and for all. Oh yeah, like honestly, if there's one thing I'm excited for DC is for when that new DC universe would go and happen so that we can all officially accept that the Snyderverse is flat out dead. Like, it's not coming back. Zack Snyder will not return to go and make more DC movies. He doesn't even want to anyways. He's not even a fan of the DC movies. So honestly, yeah, that'll be exciting for when the Snyderverse campaign can finally freaking be silent once and for all. Let's see what else we got. I can already imagine how Warner Brothers Discovery is going to be divided amongst the other studios when it implodes. Disney gets Warner Brothers film and TV assets and Warner and Hanna-Barbera properties. Comcast gets DC, Sony gets Warner Brothers games and Max, and Paramount gets Discovery stuff. I'm honestly impressed. It only took Zaslav less than a year to bring to destroy whatever Warner Brothers took almost a century to build. How appropriate that the legacy's own phrase is, "That's all, folks." All right, I think I'm going to read one more comment before we do cap this all off. So, let's see, who would have the honor of that? Okay, yeah, I'll go with this one. All those mergers and acquisitions pretty much mean that everything that we will buy, watch, listen, or read will be soon under one company's rule and production. Kind of like what By and Large is in WALL-E. This is the kind of world that should never exist at all. That is the true goal of capitalism. Make sure that this WALL-E reality comes into fruition. We should make sure that as a world population and workers, that it never happens. Oh boy, I never thought that would be a major thing, that WALL-E is capitalism's ultimate goal. That we would all be in like a hovering chair and that we would all just be fat together. Oh, what a future that would be. And with that said, that should do it for this episode of AniMat's Crazy Cartoon Cast. Thank you all so much for joining me in 2022 and for this entire crazy adventure. And also tune in next week as we will put things back to normal, or at least as normal as AniMat's Crazy Cartoon Cast can be, and we will resume to talk about the latest weekly news in this insane world of animation. So with all that said and done, I would like to say, oh, by the way, before I do, I just want to say, don't forget to go and subscribe to both my Twitch channel and the AniMat's Crazy Cartoon Cast YouTube channel, as well as to go and follow me on social media and to go and follow me on whatever podcast service you're listening on, rather it be on Spotify, Amazon, iTunes, Google Play, or whatever. So with all that said and done, I would like to say thank you all so much for listening. Thank you all so much for watching. And until next time, see ya later, dudes.